order the City of Nisswa Council Workshop. It is 6:32 p.m. and we are gathered here to hear the results of our audit for 2019. Take it away.
And with us remotely tonight is Ryan Schmidt from our audit firm, Schlenner, Wenner & Company, and he is going to go through a high-level presentation of our audit to give you some information about how things went for last year, and then certainly if you have questions, we can go over that once he's done. So, Ryan, if you're ready.
Sounds good.
All right.
Well, for starters, I just want to say thank you everybody for making an accommodation here and letting me present in this manner. With all the travel that we do as part of our job, we're kind of trying to eliminate that as much as possible. So, like Vinny said, we're going to jump into the 2019 audit here and kind of talk about how things went here. How's the audio on here? Did you get any feedback? Is that
No.
Okay, then I'll keep going. Okay, so jumping into our first slide here, kind of like in the past, we're going to start out by giving you a quick reminder about kind of what the audit process involves, what exactly it is we do during an audit. An audit for the most part consists of us coming in and getting your financial records, your financial data from the year, and we perform a number of procedures with the ultimate goal of being able to express some opinion on whether or not that information is accurate. So we don't look at 100% of all your transactions and all your activities for a year, but we take more of a risk-based approach where we do things like analytics and inquiries and determine the high-risk areas where we're going to spend the majority of our time, and then that's where the majority of our detailed testing is performed. Like I said, with the ultimate goal of being able to express that opinion. The opinion that you received this year was called a modified opinion, so that's a Genome opinion. Next couple slides here to talk a little bit about some of the other results of the audit. This is required communications here. This is where if you had any strange transactions that the bothering audit or the audit from the people accounting policies, this is where we let you know. Nothing like that we ran across. Everything was pretty much the way we would expect. One thing we like to point out here is there are a couple of balances, your liquor fund and your sewer fund, that are related to the net pension liability that's related to deferrals. Those are considered to be significant estimates, as you would call the actuarial inputs that when you're calculating those. But we'll talk about those a little later. And the next page here, this is where we let you know if we had any difficulties or issues or anything like that during the audit. Everything went very smoothly, just like it has desired. Okay, so the following slide here, before we get into the numbers, as part of the audit, we also need to take a look at some of your processes that you have in place related to accounting and related to getting your financial statements together. And we've got a few findings here related to that procedure for you have in the past. The first one we have here is related to the audit supplement. So basically what this is saying is that in order to get to that point, give you that opinion on the financial statement, we did report a few adjustments during the audit to help get you to the regulatory statement of accounting that's based pretty common. The next one we have here relates to segregation of duties. One is common in pretty much every city in the audit finding. Basically, this one's just saying that because you only have so many employees in the office, you're not able to fully segregate all the different accounting functions. That doesn't very right. So it's just something to be aware of, something to think about when you're trying to implement whatever rules you can and whatever. And finally, we've got one here for financial statement preparation. This is just letting you know that we have a third party to prepare the financial statement. I think here that would be a slight higher risk of the audit, you're in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota wants us to take a look at applying their tax. They actually provide us a number of checklists, items that we look at during the audit. No things to see related to these areas. No issues with state compliance, with your listing, or anything else on those lines, like including the same all of these areas, but it's good to get our. Alright, with that, I'll try to get some numbers a little bit here. We're going to start off by now looking at the general fund. Got a trend analysis here, 2019, pretty high level, and then we've also got 2019 budget as well. Looking at 2019, got revenues in blue, expenditures in red. Comparing back to your budget, your revenue came in over budget by about $224,000. That was mostly due to some unbudgeted grant donations, miscellaneous revenue. And then your expenditures came in over budget by about $147,000, and that was mostly related to expenses for equipment purchases, engineering, other capital outlay items. So overall, good budget.
Uh-oh. It's a virus. Yeah.
So everything, that's maybe things get blamed on that. Like flashing on the button.
Just put the microphone next to the speaker and they can hear it.
All right, so you were just, last we heard, you were just,
He had just about finished the expenditures.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Don, can you?
Barely. Go ahead.
I'm finding where the mic is on my thing here, so.
Testing.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure, I was hoping with the mic I could get it on the microphone and computer closer. So feel free to continue. I think this will be the next best thing.
Okay. Well, sorry about that, but I guess these things happen. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving here. Looking at 2019 revenues compared to your budget, you came in over your budget by about $224,000. This grants, contributions, and some donations and other miscellaneous items that just weren't included in your budget by about $147,000, mostly due to expenditures for capital outlay of about $65,000, but you actually had an increase in your fund balance for the year of about $22,000. The one item that stand out in 2019 to 2018 is that other sources and uses category there, rec fund, which I think is pretty typical. But you also had another transfer out to your fire fund as well, which I think was a reimbursement for a purchase of some sort. So it resulted in that drop that you see. So, looking at the next slide here, this is another way of looking at your general fund balance that we balance as a percentage of your annual budgeted expenditures. So this ratio here does make it look like you had a bit of a jump in your fund balance, but that much. It was pretty flat from 2018 to 2019 if you take a look at that previous slide. Expenditures for 2019 were a bit less than they were in 2018. So just because of the way that the ratio works out with your expenditures dropping, this ratio in a bit of a spike in your fund balance. Realistically, like I said, it's been pretty flat balance, well in excess of any recommendations that I've seen from the state. And the next slide here is just taking a look at your cash in your general fund real quick. Just to show you that over the past 4 years, it's been pretty flat. A little bit of an increase this year, but here we've got your remaining governmental funds. So these are the rest of your funds that are not your super fund or your liquor fund. So this is your fire fund, you're entered as non-major funds. That non-major category, that's Parks and Rec, Community Center, EDA, TIF, and your capital project fund. So activity here was pretty standard in compared to prior years. The one item a little bit different, $2,000, that's that transfer in from the general fund that I was talking about. So fund balance is at the end of the year. You ended with a fund balance of $110,000. Your debt service fund here, activity in here also very standard. You've got your charge specifically for the purpose of paying those debt expenditures. Overall, a slight increase here in your fund balance of about $12,000. Your non-majority of those expenditures you see there, about half of them, so not the majority, but about half of them relate to Parks and Rec, and most of the remainder after that relate to either here. So overall in those funds, a decrease of about $275,000. The next slide, those same three categories, we just take a quick look at what's happening with your cash balances. Fire and debt service, the increase in both of those. The big change here is your non-major governmental funds, and specifically your capital project fund. That decrease there is you using up some of the project fund for those road improvements that you completed during the year. And now we've got your proprietary funds. So we've got liquor fund on this page, and we'll have a similar slide on the next page for your sewer fund. Looking at your liquor fund, operations here were very comparable prior year. You actually did a little bit better even than 2018. Operating revenues came in a little under $4.2 million. Operating expenses, about $3.85. Overall, you had operating income of about $334,000. With that, you also had a transfer out then, just like last year, in the amount of $235,000, transferring some of that cash out to your general fund. So with that, you had an overall increase in your net position still of $102,000. So I'd say your liquor funds are looking pretty healthy. And your last fund we've got here is the sewer fund. Pretty comparable to the prior year, actually. Looking at your operating income there, last year you had an income of $52,000. This year your operating income was about $50,000, so actually very comparable. The majority of that, about $250,000, is related to hookup fees for new sewer connections. So with all of that activity, you had an increase in your net position of about $342,000. And looking at the cash in both those funds, just like we did with the other funds, we've got an increase in both the liquor and sewer fund, specifically in your sewer fund. Kind of a increase over the past 3 years. So both of those are looking pretty healthy in that regard as well. One more slide with a graph. This is your long-term debt. We've got your debt here broken out between your governmental funds, which is compared to your proprietary funds. But I guess I should clarify those governmental fund debt is being financed through a debt service fund, being financed pretty entirely by property taxes. The proprietary fund debt, that's actually just the one bond there. I believe it's in the sewer fund being financed through sewer revenues. So 2019. And that's actually all I have. Any questions?
I guess the only, this is Mayor Fred Heidman. The only question I have, I think, is looking back to farther back in your presentation, we have a rather large net reserve, and you had mentioned much higher than any. Can you give us an idea what that recommendation is?
I've anticipated this question because I think you've asked it in the past. So I actually went out to the office of the state, and what they say out there is that if you have a fund balance, is some of this cash, kind of reserved for something in particular? Do you have plans for it? Is it, is there a particular reason? I think 35 to 50 is a bit lower than what most cities maybe shoot for. But if you did want to reduce this ratio, the way that you could do this, funds for some sort of future improvement or future some of these dollars for any specific purpose, it pulls those dollars out of the unassigned fund balance and it puts them into a reserve, and then suddenly this ratio. That might be something to consider.
Would doing that, one thing that's come up as we've just briefly looked at this in the past, credit rating, would moving money into a reserved fund, is that how?
Negative impact on the credit rating because the funds are still there. I'm not sure exactly what kind of inputs I'll go into calculating that credit rating, if they look largely at your unassigned fund balance, or if they're looking at other things like, I guess I can't say with 100% confidence what kind of impact it would have, but I certainly wouldn't think it would be a negative impact to just be assigning these for specific purposes instead of having them all sitting in unassigned. Maybe, who did you work with your bonding agency last time? Was it Northland Securities or anybody like that? I think they usually do those credit ratings, right? Okay. Yeah, she'd probably have better answers for you in that regard.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Don, you have questions?
I have one question. The graph on the very bottom of the page, financial highlights, I think non-major government section there, and you mentioned Park and Rec. Could you go over that again for me? Just that one column?
It's the one with the non-major governmental funds here?
Yeah.
Yep, that one. Perfect.
Yep. I believe the funds that are within that non-major Park and Rec fund, your community center fund, your EDA fund, multiple TIF funds, and then your capital project fund. So all of those in the financial statements get kind of some supplemental schedules in the back that break out the individual details. But of them out to that total of $576,000 that you see there, and the portion of that that relates to Parks and Rec, I believe it's about 200 and
That's definitely in the ballpark, Brian.
Yeah. So that's what I was getting at there, is that the majority of those expenditures come from the Parks and Rec fund specifically.
What was your question?
I was just scratching my head.
think it was the movies in the ball
The movies in the ball field, yeah.
They bought a truck, didn't they?
Correct,
Later on.
it's not unusual. I mean, the budget's been pretty flat for the last few years, for sure, so.
Well, 250,000 is not an insignificant amount, and I just wanted a little clarity there.
Gary? Mike?
Good.
So the audit will be included in our regular meeting agenda for approval. I certainly just want to thank Ryan and his team for another smooth audit year, and I think we've continued to make really good improvements in our financial process, and it was a good audit year. Maggie and I went through some new processes and get her more involved in it, and it went really well. So hopefully Ryan thinks the same.
Oh, I the prep that you two put into it, we don't see that everywhere we go, so thank you for the work that you put into making things go smoothly during the audit.
So thanks.
Yeah. Yep, thank you.
All right, thanks.
Yep. Got it.
Any other questions or anything? Or motion to
Motion to adjourn.
by
Second.
Johnson? All's in favor, aye?
Aye.